This is the Yukon, a territory bigger than California or Texas, with fewer people in all of it than would fill a football stadium, and most of them packed into a single town. Past that town, the numbers stop making sense. Glaciers half a mile thick. Canada's highest mountain, still growing taller. A river 100,000 people once risked everything to travel, chasing gold. Bones in a cave that may be the oldest trace of human beings anywhere in North America. Almost no one will ever stand here. The ones who do, the people born on this land, and the few who came north and never went home, gave up easy lives for it. And not one of them regrets the trade. They'll tell you they have something money can't buy. Stay with me to the far end of the territory, and you'll understand exactly what they mean. Almost everyone in the Yukon lives in one place. About 47,000 people share a land bigger than California, and roughly 7 of every 10 of them are in Whitehorse. The rest are spread thin across a handful of small communities, some hundreds of miles apart. One of them, Old Crow. The only way in is by plane. People don't end up here by accident, and the ones who stay don't stay for an easy life. Winter runs long and dark and far below freezing. Everything costs more this far north. What they get back is space, quiet, and a kind of self-reliance the rest of the country gave up a long time ago. Under a sky that lights up green almost every clear night of the year. The gold rush brought 100,000 people here in 3 years, then took them all away again just as fast. The towns they built are sinking into the permafrost now, or rotting quietly in the trees. The people who lasted are the ones who were here first. There are 14 First Nations in the Yukon, and most of them govern themselves today with their own laws on their own land. They earned that the hard way. Back in the 1980s, they were offered a land settlement worth more than $600 million, and they turned it down because it didn't include the right to govern themselves. They wanted the land and the say over it more than the money. You can see what that's worth at the table. For a lot of families here, the most important food never comes from a store. It comes off the land, into a freezer they fill every fall. A single moose can carry 2 households through a whole winter, and there are more moose in the Yukon than there are people. Hunters take only the bulls and leave the cows, the way they always have, so the herd comes back the next year. In Old Crow, caribou is close to half of what people eat, shared out of the family cache as stew and dried meat when the herd comes through. At Kluchi, families still dry salmon in the same spruce smokehouses their grandparents built. And when the runs nearly failed, they kept the camp going anyway, just so the children would still learn how. Up here, sharing what the land gives you is how you tell someone they belong. You can't understand any of that from the outside, so we're going in. Everything I've just told you, you're about to see for yourself. Because the Yukon hides things far stranger than its size lets on. A river that drained away in a single afternoon and never came back. A silver town where the miners walked out one morning and left the furniture sitting inside. Stay with me all the way to the far north, and the thing these people say money can't buy will have shown itself. Kluane National Park is 82% ice, the largest non-polar ice field on Earth, with glaciers up to half a mile thick. Across the northwestern corner of Canada, the Yukon holds this park at its core, a land unlike anywhere else on the continent. More than 2,000 glaciers grind across it, reworking the ground every single day. "17 of Canada's 20 highest peaks rise here, including Mount Logan, the tallest in the country. These summits still climb, pushed higher every year as the St. Elias range grows. The Champagne, Aishihik, and Kluane First Nations have lived here for thousands of years, holding knowledge older than any map. Linked with protected land across 3 borders, it forms the largest protected area on Earth. Those frozen ridges suit the Dall sheep, surest footed of all the climbers here. Kluane holds the highest concentration of these animals found anywhere in the world. A bright white coat signals health across the herd, so the cleanest rams tend to earn the most respect. Their split hooves work like climbing gear, gripping rock faces most predators refuse to touch. Curved amber horns matter more for ranking than for fighting, since the bigger the curl, the less a ram has to prove. When wolves or grizzlies close in, the herd simply climbs higher, into ground no hunter will follow. Below those high cliffs, glacial meltwater pools into the turquoise basin of Kathleen Lake. The King's Throne Cirque rises directly above the shore, curving around the water like a natural amphitheatre. That turquoise colour comes from glacial flour, rock ground so fine by ice that it scatters light into an almost artificial shade. People can reach this one spot without expedition gear, while almost everywhere else demands serious mountaineering. Cold all year, the water stays clear enough that looking into it feels like looking through glass. Meltwater keeps shifting the shorelines a little more every season. One fish gave up the ocean to live only in these cold waters, the kokanee. Lowell Glacier dammed the Alsek River so often that a group of sockeye got cut off from the sea for good. Stranded in freshwater, they slowly became a landlocked salmon, living only in these lakes. They still turn blood red, still fight upstream, and still die after spawning, all without ever tasting salt water. The glacier ran an accidental experiment on them, and the fish quietly passed. After they die, their bodies feed the lake bed, the insects and the birds, fueling a whole food chain from one run. This remote land keeps a downed USAFC 47D right where it crashed. The wreck rests on a slope north of Haines Junction, reachable only by helicopter or a punishing 5-day hike. It came down while searching for a troop transport that had vanished with 44 people aboard, an aircraft never found. So the plane sent to rescue the lost became lost itself, its fuselage still sitting where it hit, military markings faintly readable today. Accessible by a working place on the other side is the most remote community, where residents call themselves the Caribou people of Old Crow. The Vuntut Gwich'in First Nation lives on the banks of the Porcupine River, far from any road. When the porcupine caribou herd moves, the whole community moves with it. Caribou can make up more than half of what people eat here, served as stew, sausage, jerky, and dry meat from the family cache. Elders set the rules, so hunters take only what they need and never touch the migrating cows and calves. People hang caribou and moose antlers outside their homes, showing pride in the animal that feeds them. Each spring, the herd's return brings a festival called Caribou Days, held in its honour. Their oral histories describe ancestors living alongside mammoths, passed down as memory rather than legend. Permafrost keeps pushing mammoth bones to the surface, opening a record of a vanished world. The Bluefish caves may hold the oldest human trace in all of North America. Animal bones found inside carry cut marks from human tools, dated to around 24,000 years ago. That date pushes known human presence on the continent back by roughly 10,000 years. People were already here at the height of the last ice age, far earlier than once believed. Land this unforgiving runs on into Tombstone Territorial Park, a place the last ice age left untouched. The Trondek Hwechin call this Dall Chelchanen, meaning ragged mountain land. Surviving the ice age left behind plant species found in very few other places on the continent. By late August, the whole plateau flips to red and gold, sometimes changing colour within a few days. The Dempster Highway is the only way in, so exposed that a single flat tyre can strand travellers for days. Black granite walls define the skyline, broken by ridges, valleys, and ice-cut basins. One dark spire towers over all of it, sharp enough that explorers named it Tombstone Mountain. Early explorers thought the peak resembled a grave marker, which is where its name came from. What stands today is hardened magma, left behind after everything softer around it wore away. Rising over 7,000 feet, and visible for miles, it stayed unclimbed until surprisingly late in the mountaineering era. Its reflection in Talus Lake often looks sharper than the peak itself, since the water sits so still. A single backcountry trail runs from this peak to the shore of Grizzly Lake. Reaching the water means walking 11.5 miles with no roads and no shortcuts. Only 10 tent spots sit at the lake, and everyone needs a permit, booked well ahead. A hard-shell bear canister is required by law here, one of the few places in North America where that rule holds. Beyond the shore, the marked trail simply ends, leaving open tundra and nothing but navigation skill to go on. Where that tundra runs into bare rock, a sheer face erupts into Mount Monolith. The rock climbs in a near vertical wall, jumping out of flat tundra with nothing to ease the eye into it. Its north face falls close to 2,000 feet, steep enough that climbers have started up and turned back. Winter wind chill drops far below freezing, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in under a minute. The river draining this high country narrows into a roaring chute between black volcanic walls at Miles Canyon. The southern Touchstone knew this place as Kluane, meaning running water through canyon, long before any prospector saw it. Old lava flows formed these walls, leaving smooth black basalt on both sides of the water. More than 28,000 gold rush prospectors had no choice but to run this passage, the single deadliest point on the route north. The Northwest Mounted Police stopped every boat that lacked a licensed pilot, with no exceptions allowed. Even so, boats capsized, supplies went under, and men drowned against rock that gave no quarter. A dam built upstream later killed the current, turning a proven killer into a calm walking path. Cold defines this region, and nothing wears it better than the Muskox. On the Yukon North Slope, this shaggy survivor was hunted out in the 1800s, so every animal there today comes from a later reintroduction. Its coat works in two layers, the outer shedding wind and water, the inner 8 times warmer than sheep's wool. When wolves press in, the herd never scatters, forming a tight ring with horns out and calves sealed inside. This circle has held since the Pleistocene, unchanged for thousands of generations. Through Arctic winter, they survive on dry grass scraped from under the snow, moving little to save energy. A sharp nose locates plants buried under heavy snowpack, and they dig in exactly the right spot. Bulls clash in breeding season with head-on charges loud enough to carry across open ground. Keno feels just as frozen in time as a silver town the world moved on from. The town's name comes straight from a gambling game, chosen to lure prospectors north, and the trick worked for a while. Silver turned up in the surrounding hills and built the place almost overnight. When the mine shut down with little warning, residents simply walked out, leaving furniture inside and equipment rusting where it stopped. About 20 people stay on today, in a spot one magazine flatly called the weirdest place in the whole territory. One man has run the snack bar out of an old miner's bunkhouse since 1995, baking homemade pizza at the end of a 280-mile gravel road. Its two bars sit across the street from each other, and their owners have not spoken in over a decade. A former hotel owner sided his whole house with 32,000 empty beer bottles, still standing a few blocks from the museum. Residents here call themselves one big unhappy family, yet they come together the moment anyone hits trouble. The territory keeps defying expectations, none more than the sand dunes rising at 60 degrees north in the Carcross desert. Despite the look of it, this is not technically a desert, since the area gets too much rain to qualify. A rain shadow from the surrounding mountains keeps the ground dry enough for the sand to hold. The sand itself is leftover glacial lake bed, still pushed around by the wind off Bennett Lake. Covering barely a square mile, it still grows its own plant species found almost nowhere else this far north. Emerald Lake brings another surprise close by. The Carcross and Tagish First Nation knew it as Rainbow Lake, after a colour that runs through greens that hardly seem real. No dye or algae is at work, only sunlight bouncing off white calcium carbonate spread across the shallow floor by retreating glaciers. The water is barely deep enough to cover the lake bed, which is exactly why the green reads so bright. Local drivers know it well, since the colour is strong enough to make people pull over just to look. The SS Tucci sits nearby, a luxury steamer that never sailed again. For decades it carried cruise passengers through the southern lakes out of Carcross before the Territorial government bought it to restore. The whole vessel burned to the ground before a single fire suppression system could be fitted. Its engines, boiler, paddlewheel and hull now sit on display beside the old railroad station. Fire wiped out the project just as the work was meant to begin. The most remote ground in the whole territory rises offshore at Herschel Island, 3 miles into the Beaufort Sea. The Inuvialuit name, Kikiktaruk, simply means it is island, plain and accurate. Inuvialuit families have hunted here for thousands of years, long before it became the territory's first protected park. Their ancestors hunted bowhead whales from skin boats, drawn to the same waters the whales still cross today. When American whalers arrived in the 1890s, local families traded fresh caribou meat for sugar, tea and flour off the ships. Getting here means a charter flight from Inuvik, since no roads or ferries reach it. This shore is the only place in the territory where polar bears appear, sharing the coast with grizzlies. These bears hunt mostly by waiting, holding completely still at a seal's breathing hole for hours. Their fur only looks white, since each hair is actually clear and funnels sunlight down to black skin underneath. As summer ice melts back, they come ashore and walk straight into grizzly country. Where the two bears meet, they have produced hybrid cubs, which people here nickname Pizzly bears. Males never hibernate, staying active out on the ice all year. One adult can swim more than 60 miles without a break, with no land anywhere in sight. Their whole life depends on sea ice, so warmer years leave them stranded ashore for longer. These cold waters also pull in one of the ocean's most vocal animals, the beluga whale. These pale whales travel in tight social groups, often cruising just below the surface. They are the only whales that can turn their heads, an ability built for threading through ice and narrow gaps. Sailors nicknamed them sea canaries because their constant chirping carried right through wooden hulls. People fought over these waters for centuries, nowhere harder than at Fort Selkirk. The post sits where the Pelly and Yukon rivers meet, a junction draining over half the territory. Chilkat Tlingit warriors raided and burned it down to the chimneys, before it was rebuilt and even proposed as the capital. When a highway bypassed the site in the 1950s, residents walked away for good. Even so, the Selkirk First Nation never let go of it, and they co-manage the site today as a place for cultural renewal. their families still return by boat each summer, since this was a fishing and trading camp long before any fort stood here. Guides from the community walk visitors through the old buildings, telling the stories of the people who lived in them. More than 40 buildings still line the bank, among them St Andrew's Anglican Church, reachable only by boat or plane. The peregrine falcon claims the cliffs directly across the river. DDT once thinned their eggshells so badly that eggs cracked under the parents' weight, nearly wiping out the species. Once scientists linked DDT to collapsing populations, it was banned and captive-bred young were released into the wild. This part of the river became a key recovery site, giving released young falcons the height, wind and open water they needed. In a full dive, they topped 200 miles an hour, the fastest movements of any animal alive. Their talons are not the main weapon, since a notch in the beak snaps the prey's neck in mid-air. Around the river, they keep the balance, holding shorebird and waterfowl numbers in check. Their comeback here now guides falcon recovery across the north. These falcons rely on wind and open shoreline, both spread across the Champagne and Aishihik land at Deserdash Lake. The water sits shallow and warm, one of the few lakes here comfortable enough for summer fishing. A Second World War military camp once stood on the shore, built for the Haines Highway, and abandoned when the fighting ended. Its southern Tuchona name marks it as a headwater, draining into the Tachanshini, one of the last wild rivers on the continent. Behind it rise peaks holding the largest non-polar ice fields on Earth, clear from the shore on a bright day. Forty Mile earns a different kind of record as the oldest non-Indigenous town in the territory. Founded in the 1880s, it grew into a complete town of shops, saloons, and even a courthouse. That whole community emptied almost overnight once gold turned up in the Klondike, with everyone chasing the bigger strike. Many original buildings simply stayed standing, and the site is now part of a UNESCO World Heritage listing. Kluchi village outlasted them all, never once emptied. In southern Tuchone, the name given by the people here means a place for fishing, and families have returned every summer for thousands of years. It remains the only traditional fish camp still in active use, anywhere in the territory. People still dry sockeye in the same spruce log smokehouses their ancestors built, with the method essentially unchanged. Out of respect, the first salmon of the season is killed quickly with a special club, and the dried fish once fed both families and dog teams through the winter. When the runs collapsed, families bought salmon elsewhere, just to keep the camp and its teaching alive. Children still learn here how to cut, smoke and hang fish, holding knowledge that almost slipped away. Grizzlies arrive each season for one reason: the returning run of sockeye. These fish swim more than 1,200 miles from the Pacific to reach the shallow water here. They eat nothing the whole way, burning muscle and fat until the flesh turns blood red. Memory guides them home, finding their exact birth stream by smell within a few feet. Once they spawn, they die, feeding the next generation of fish, the bank trees, and every bear around. The run collapsed in the 1990s and only partly recovered, so each season is now watched closely. Losing it would unravel the bears, the birds, the trees, and the people tied to it for thousands of years. The sky above still lights up almost nightly as the Aurora Borealis. A calm green ribbon overhead can erupt into red and violet waves within minutes. The display runs from late summer through the middle of April, lighting up more than half the year. It appears with a reliability seen in very few inhabited places on the planet. Charged particles off the sun strike gases high in the atmosphere to make the colours. For First Nations cultures here, the lights are the spirits of ancestors, still present and still moving. Cold, clear, still nights give the sharpest shows, when the air holds almost no moisture. The Dempster Highway runs along a route people travelled long before any car. It runs 460 miles of gravel and is the only public road in North America to cross the Arctic Circle. Driving the full length takes most people 2 to 3 days, and that assumes no flat tyres, no ferry delays, and no sudden weather. The route traces a Gwich'in trading path, later patrolled by police on dog sled through the worst of winter. It crosses the Ogilvie Mountains, Oka Badlands at Engineer Creek, and the open Blackstone uplands before reaching the Richardson Range. Drivers here carry 2 spare tyres as a matter of habit, since a single sharp rock can strand them for hours with no cell signal. Out here, the unwritten rule is that anyone passing a broken down vehicle always stops to help. The road stays open every season, and in winter some sections run straight over frozen rivers. In the wrong season, travellers wait days for a ferry, while in the right season, the ice runs thick enough to carry a loaded truck. Kluane Lake holds one of the strangest changes in the whole territory. This is the largest lake held entirely within the territory, running about 50 miles long against the St. Elias Mountains. When the Kaskawulsh Glacier redirected its meltwater, the lake's main feeder river dried up within days. Water levels have been dropping ever since, leaving old shorelines high and exposed. Scientists named the event River Piracy, one of the first ever caught as it happened. Wind funnels off the mountains hard enough that it once flattened a wartime construction camp on the shore, which is how a nearby community got its name. Silver City lingers on the southern shore, slowly disappearing into the trees. At its height, the place held a police barracks, a mining office, and a post office. Today, only about 6 buildings remain standing among the encroaching trees. No fire or disaster emptied it, since people simply left when the gold rush moved elsewhere. Whitehorse, on the other hand, rose into the capital of the whole territory. The city grew where the railway ended and the northbound riverboats began, the natural spot for a capital. Its name comes from rapids that no longer exist, drowned when a downstream dam raised the water. It governs a territory larger than California, yet its whole population could fit in one stadium. People here do not just endure winter, they race through it with dog sled events and ice festivals in brutal cold. A 1,000-mile sled dog race sets off from here, and every February the Frostbite Festival fills the dark with music. This is the Dry City in Canada, and a retired DC-3 aircraft spins on a pole at the airport as the largest weather vane on Earth. In summer, the sun barely dips below the horizon, so midnight can feel like afternoon. All of it sits on Kwanlin Dune and Ta'an Quechan territory, peoples here long before any railway. The SS Klondike rests on the city's riverbank, dry docked for good. It was the largest sternwheeler ever to sail the Yukon River, running a route of more than 400 miles. Passengers, mail and silver ore all rode aboard, with ore as its main cargo. When it was retired, crews did not scrap it, but dragged it onto dry land where it sits today. Just steps away stands the old log church, the oldest building in town. Builders raised it around the turn of the century, as gold rush stampeders were still streaming through. For early settlers, it was more than a church, standing as one of the only permanent structures in town. Those simple logs outlasted nearly everyone who passed during the rush, and the building now works as a museum. The Yukon River flows right past that old church's door. The river runs close to 2,000 miles from its headwaters down to the Bering Sea, the third longest on the continent. In a single gold rush season, around 30,000 stampeders built their own boats and floated downstream toward Dawson City. Sternwheelers took over the traffic afterward, right up until a new highway made them useless almost overnight. Inside one generation, the busiest route in the north became water people, now only cross on a bridge. Indigenous peoples, traders and gold seekers all moved along its current long before any of that. Most of those hand-built boats first launched from Bennett Lake before joining the main current. Five Finger Rapids wait downstream, where the current crashes into solid rock. The pillars split the river into 4 channels, the most feared point on the whole route north. The current between them could flip a loaded boat in seconds. Going downstream, a stampeder got one chance to pick the right gap, and many chose wrong and lost everything. Sternwheelers heading upstream could not fight it, so crews winched them through one at a time by steam cable. Travellers remembered this spot for life, whether they cleared the rapids or not. Below the pillars, the river slows and widens into the strange water of Lake Laberge. Across this 30-mile widening, the current dies, wind rises, and fog can roll in without warning. Stampeders who survived the rapids often sat stranded for days, facing open water, no shelter, and no clear way forward. A poet later turned the lake into legend with the cremation of Sam McGee, the most recited poem ever written about the territory. Many people who can quote that poem have no idea the lake itself is real. Its mood matches the cold, still water, almost exactly. The moose wades into these shallows at dawn, at home in the cold water. A bull can stand taller than a horse and tip past 1,500 pounds, the heaviest of all the deer. Those long legs let it wade chest high through water no wolf will follow it into. For all that bulk, it moves through the brush with almost no sound. Through winter, it lives on bark and twigs, since nearly everything else lies buried under snow. Wolves are the main danger, though a healthy adult will hold its ground and has killed attackers outright. Calves face the real risk, born in spring and left vulnerable for weeks while the wolves wait. By late summer, a bull grows antlers spanning 6 feet, uses them one season, drops them, then grows them again. Dawson City began where this river meets the Klondike, built entirely on gold. The town grew from nothing into the largest Canadian settlement west of Winnipeg in about 2 years. It emptied just as fast once the gold ran out, the whole rush lasting only 3 years. Of the roughly 100,000 who came for gold, most found nothing, while the merchants got rich instead. About 1,300 people live here now, where the summer sun stays up for weeks and locals mow lawns at midnight. A downtown saloon serves a drink garnished with a real preserved human toe, and tens of thousands have let it touch their lips to join the club. The rule is strict since swallowing the toe brings a heavy fine and the anger of the whole town. 2 famous writers kept cabins here that still stand, one who wrote of Sam McGee, one who wrote The Call of the Wild. All of it sits on the land of the hen-speaking people who fished this junction long before any gold was found. The Dawson Historical Complex captures the rush better than any photograph. "17 original gold rush structures line the wooden boardwalks here. False front saloons sit beside Victorian houses, all tilting slowly as the frozen ground underneath them shifts. Some went up in a matter of weeks, built by people certain the boom would never end. That boom ended fast, yet the buildings held on, still upright, and still leaning a little more each year. Dredge number 4 sits abandoned on the creek where the rush first started. The machine is about the size of an apartment building, sitting amid the gravel it churned up. It chewed through entire creek beds and left ridges of waste rock running for miles. A few machines like this did more damage in decades than every individual miner combined. The people pushed off this land by the rush still gather every 2 years at a village called Moosehide. The village sits about 2 miles downriver and can only be reached by boat. People cross the same water the gold seekers once crowded to get there. Every 2 years the gathering held here brings drumming, dancing, and nightly feasts back to the site. Thousands come to share moose, salmon, and food from the land, with workshops teaching hide stretching, drum making, and quill work. Each hen song returned from Alaska has to be relearned and carried home through ceremony before it belongs here again. The Paddlewheel graveyard hides just across the water, lost among the trees. 7 gold rush steamers rot here, not wrecked, but simply docked and then left behind. When highways took over the river routes, crews abandoned them where they sat, and the forest grew up around the smokestacks and engine rooms. It stands as one of the largest collections of intact gold rush sternwheelers anywhere on the continent. Stranger still is the signpost forest, built entirely by passing travellers. The first sign pointed toward one soldier's hometown while he worked on the Alaska Highway, and the rest of the world followed his lead. License plates, street signs, and handmade boards now cover roughly 2 acres. Nobody runs the place, since travellers simply show up and nail on a piece of their own. At its centre stands the only surviving mileage post from the original Alaska Highway, nearly lost under the layers. Gold seekers wrote a far harder chapter at a glacial lake called Bennett Lake. About 15,000 gold seekers reached this shore in one winter, where the mountains ended and the long wait set in. Stuck behind the ice for months, they cut down the surrounding forest and built around 7,000 boats by hand. The instant the ice broke in spring, the whole fleet pushed off toward Dawson City together. No road reaches the spot even now, only a trail or a train, just as the Stampeders had it. One building outlasted the vanished town, the small St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. Workers built the small church from leftover boat lumber, the last structure standing from a town of thousands. Two missionaries hauled hand-blown stained glass over the Chilkoot Pass on foot, just to fit the windows. By the time the work was done, the town around it had already emptied out. The mountain goat rules the cliffs high above the lake. This is the only place in the territory where these climbers and Dall sheep share terrain, forced together where two ranges collide. Each hoof has a hard outer rim for grip and a soft inner pad that grabs bare rock like a suction cup. They stick to near vertical faces on purpose, since wolves and bears cannot follow. Newborn kids manage sheer rock within days, moving as if falling were not a risk. Through heavy snow they stay high, scraping ice off rock for frozen lichen, rather than dropping to where predators wait. Thick coats let them ride out winter storms on exposed ledges that would kill most animals. At the meeting point of two mountain worlds, the goat looks at ease in a place that defeats almost everything else. This is Yukon, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Quebec, check out this video.